Okay, we're live. Hello to everyone who's tuning in. We're at the Underground Art Initiative live retreat. We have an amazing audience here, participants and our presenters, and Lisa Haggis is here to talk about heart-centered branding. I'm super excited about this session, so let the games begin.
Awesome. All right.
All right, Lisa, go ahead.
All right. I hadn't actually planned to introduce myself, but I'll just do a really quick. So Shana mentioned I specialize in branding, but I want to tell you a little bit what that means specifically for me. I'm not a designer. I don't work on logos and the actual implementation physically of brand. What I do is I help people with the thinking that happens before that stuff. I help them make the really difficult decisions that take all of the inspiration and ideas and vision that you have as an entrepreneur and channel it into an articulated statement, an articulated vision that then increases your chances of being able to really bring it into reality. So taking all of your inspiration, like right now you just came back from this farmer's market and you've got ideas floating around, but they don't really mean anything yet until you've really grounded them into some strategy for your business. You don't know how it's going to manifest itself in the actual customer experience yet. And so that's really the part of branding that I think gets overlooked a lot. There's kind of the shiny parts of branding, and that's actually what we're going to be focusing on most today is the brand character. It's really the exciting part, but you can't forget about kind of the bones, the structure of the business, and how it's so strongly related to brand, because it ultimately is what's going to allow you to deliver on a promise to your customers in a way that nobody else can. Can
you repeat that last phrase and write this down, what she just said?
Well,
promise.
The part about the promise? Okay. So it's the underlying structure. It's the bones of the business that determine whether or not you can deliver on a promise for your customers in a way that nobody else can.
That's gold.
Okay. So so going into branding, it's really easy to forget. And I love what Shana said about. We get kind of intimidated by it, we get excited, then we get overwhelmed, then we get intimidated because there's just so much inspiration that happens through the branding process, and it can be easy to forget why we're even doing it. So really what it just boils down to is you want to make your product, your service, your business appeal to your customers more than other options. And you want to make it appeal to your right, ideal customers. So that's really all you're trying to do. And there's a lot you can do to make that happen. And so there's lots of ways to build up the richness of your brand. And one of those ways is the brand character. And that's what we're going to specialize on today. And so the brand character component is what a lot of people call brand personality. I use character because I think it goes deeper. Like a person has values and underlying belief systems and all of these things that ultimately create a rich character of how they show up in the world. And so your brand character is the personality. It's the expression of who you are as a business. It's the part that your customers are going to, sorry if you hear my dog barking, it's the part that your customers are going to really resonate emotionally with, and it's going to probably leave the most lasting impression and often be why they buy, but it's not going to be necessarily why they continue to buy. So a lot of times it's what's going to draw people in, it has an allure to it. But businesses also need substance. And so what I like to say is that businesses need both substance and style. And the style component is really about having a unique character that's all your own. It adds distinctiveness and interest to who you are as a business. And so it really is the fun part. But getting clear first on the strategy, which is, what's your purpose as a business? And what are your unique beliefs and your perspective on how you're changing your industry? And hopefully you've had the opportunity over the last couple of days to at least start digging some of that stuff up. I'm sure you have, in terms of, what is it you hope to achieve with your business. And today we're going to talk about how we can polish up that outer expression of who you are as a business. And like everything else, it's not random. And so what a lot of people do at this stage is they go and they seek inspiration like crazy. A lot of times they seek it from competitors and other examples in their industry, and then they take a mix mash of all of the things that they found that did resonate with them, and they don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to turn it into a brand. And so usually their next step is they knock on the door of a designer and they throw all of that random inspiration at them, or sites of people they like, and then they don't understand why, then they're not able to reach that vision, that internal, passion, vision that you have for your brand. And so it's so important to really step into your own role as the brand director for your business. The designer that you hire, the writer that you hire, these people are not in charge of your brand. You are. And the clearer that you can get right down to knowing, what colors you want, what shapes, what symbols are going to be a part of your brand and your business, that's your job, to at least have thought about it before you engage a designer, so that you're not leaving it in their hands, partly because, it's not fair to expect them to read your mind, but mostly because you're going to waste your money if you do hire a designer and you haven't done this work in advance. So that's my little spiel on the importance of kind of getting clear on your vision before actually kind of letting the rubber hit the road and starting to design. I know that a lot of people have different styles, and sometimes you have to do in order to get clarity, and that's okay too. But what we're going to do today is try to bring some of the clarity about some of the planning and strategy, so that, in your next stage, which I think today you're going to start creating some graphics, you'll be that much more likely to be able to create really killer graphics, but that also actually are on brand for you, that are actually conveying a proper message, not just pretty. It's not just about being eye-catching or pretty. It's about creating a representation of your brand that tells a true story. And so let me just kind of stop here for a second and see if anybody has any questions about kind of the big rant I just did before we kind of move forward a little more.
Lisa, I love what you said about stepping into your own role as a brand director. I really love that, because it's so easy to get distracted by what everyone else is doing and capturing ideas of what everyone else is doing, and then you forget to listen to yourself and to your own voice and your own personality, like you said, your own character. I really love that.
Oh, good. I'm really glad, and that's it's something that I think we tend, don't overestimate your expertise in an area. Don't try to be your own designer if you're not a designer. Don't try to, you can't really do your own photographs, but, you have to know your limits. But when it comes down to it, you're the visionary behind your business, and there's a vision that you want to bring into reality, and so you have to be the driver. And, part of that is knowing where your limits are and knowing where your strengths are. But really, you're in the middle. So if you're, bringing together all kinds of elements to create your brand, you are in the middle. And so you're the one that's creating the consistency of the vision by, giving direction, creative direction to all of these different, people. And I'm, it's not like you're going to be working with all kinds of designers up front, or you're probably going to be doing some of it yourself as well, but you still have to have that vision. And so over time, you're the carrier of it until your business gets so big that you can hire a brand director if you want to. But when you're small, that is one of the key roles in your business, is to be your brand director, because your brand is your business. Like it's so intertwined. You don't. It's not just an extra layer or a nice to have or an add-on, right? It's, if you don't have a brand, you do have a brand. You know, you can't not have a brand. It's something that you're building whether you intend to or not. So intend to, and be the director of it. And so there's, you know, I talked about how there's kind of two parts to branding. There's the strategy, or like the strategic essence, which is really about kind of having those revolutionary ideas and perspective on your industry and doing something different, really shaking things up. And then the other component is the character, which is the creative expression of who you are, you know, in terms of your visuals, your verbal identity, and how you kind of show up, behavior, the behavior of yourself as a company. But there's also two principles that I want to kind of throw out at you before we move forward. In all branding, whether you're working on your character, whether you're working on your strategic, kind of the bones of the business, the first principle is authenticity. And so authenticity comes first. And whenever somebody doesn't know whether they have kind of the means to implement a brand yet, what they're missing this point. You know, you do, because everything comes from a true place. Like, you don't need to go and learn about your industry in order to start kind of building the foundation of your brand, because it all starts from within, of these places of truth and authenticity. Your true motivations, your true values, your talents, your gifts, you know, your view of the world. All of this stuff is just true. It's there, it's in you, and digging that stuff up is always the first step, because that's your raw materials. You never want to build a brand out of anything but that, out of anything that is just truly innate within you as the visionary. Now, of course, if we were to expand into like big corporations, it dilutes a little bit, but when we're talking about you, you know, you're the leader of your business right now. Why would you ever build it outside of your zone of what is true for you, right? So authenticity is the first part. And I hate how trendy authenticity has become, but a lot of people are kind of like talking about this authentic branding. But what's really important to realize is the authentic part is absolutely critical, but it's not enough. It's not enough to just get real and then slap that out into the world. There has to be, the second part is strategy. It's about really honing in on what's the most relevant to your customers and the most unique among your industry. So from all of these raw materials that you've dug up, so when we're talking about character, we're going to be talking about your personality. And people are really complex. So we're going to be digging up all kinds of character attributes, values that are innate within you. And we don't just have one or two or three. We have plenty, hundreds maybe, of attributes that are very true about us. You know, and there's a hierarchy. Some of them are a lot more regular and potent in our personality, and some of them are a little more dormant. But it's all true, and so it all has a place in your brand if you want it to. But there's some of those things that are going to resonate more with your ideal customer. And so that helps you kind of narrow in from all of this possibility of your brand. You can start to narrow in on, well, where do I overlap with what my customer wants from me and is looking for and is going to resonate with and is going to connect with. And then that gives you a smaller subset of attributes and values that are unique to you and also, or that are true for you and that also resonate with your customers. And then from that subset, you're going to look at your industry and you're going to see what everybody else is doing. Because the true thing is that in most industries, everybody does the same thing. And, you know, with the popularity of branding, there's definitely some more diversity now. But you still see kind of the norms going on, especially because of what I talked about earlier, which is that people generally just look to their industry for inspiration, bring that to a designer, and then go from there. And also they're going to designers who specialize in one industry, and all their sites kind of look the same. And so, you know, you do see that within an industry, there are definitely norms, and you do not want to be part of that. And so your last piece of the strategy is among, you know, where you have overlapped your customers and you've identified this fertile ground for your brand. The last part is, well, which part of this is the least like my competitors? And that's when you've really kind of found your sweet spot in terms of where you should stake your claim in your industry as who you are as a business. Does anybody have questions about any of that?
Yes. Did you say the least like your competitors?
Yes. Yeah, you don't want to be like them, right? You first want to be authentic, though, which is why I kind of presented it in the way that I did, because, you know, you could look at your industry and say, well, nobody's going this way, but if it's not you either, then that's just no good. So first you, then your customers, then your industry. And that in that order, you're going to be able to kind of hone in on something that is going to really excite you and be true for you, be relevant to your customers, and stand out a little bit from your industry. And so, you know, and from a customer perspective, again, kind of getting back to why we're really doing this, think about, I have this example here, and I don't, I truly keep these on hand for branding examples, not for eating. But, you know, as a customer, if you walk into a grocery store and you have to make a really important decision of which chocolate bar you're going to buy,
I think yes.
Who would buy this one?
I would.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would.
Somebody who said they would buy this one, tell me why.
Go for it, Liz.
It stands out. It's very bold, and I like sweet cherry and pecan in my chocolate.
Yes.
Okay, so, and who would choose this one?
I would, because that looks like hazelnuts to me.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my, I just love hazelnut.
It looks,
so, like, I see something that looks like hazelnut, and I'm like, boom, do it.
Okay, so we have a hazelnut lover. Anybody else want to say why they would buy this one?
Because it looks natural. Like, it looks more natural.
Okay.
I go for the other one because it looks badass. I want to feel bad.
All right. Okay, so the people who would buy this one said it was bold, it was badass. People who would buy this one said it was natural and hazelnut. But what you see there is people are giving, you know, personality attributes to a chocolate bar based on the packaging, and even more, they're making. What was that?
You think they don't have personality?
They speak to me.
If I took their clothes off, they'd be the same. But yeah, so, you know, you're making your decision based on the personality you've attributed to the chocolate bar, but there's more to it than that. It's a personality you want to you know, that resonates with you. Either you see yourself that way, you want to see yourself that way, or you just want to feel like that right now. It doesn't matter, but you're seeing a promise here. You're seeing a promise of bold badassery that, yes, I'll have some of that right now, thank you. And here, you're seeing the opportunity to be maybe a little more high-end or natural, and so you're like, yeah, you know, that suits me, that gives a promise of, you know, like this one actually has a little opening, like you got to see this. It opens up like a book.
Oh,
And then look at
very
see?
well crafted.
Okay, so it feels rich, and so it gives you this experience of feeling rich. And so, as a customer, this branding stuff, it's not it adds to our lives too. Like a lot of people talk about how businesses, marketing, branding, all of this, it's like pulling it over on the customers, but that's not true. We love this stuff. It means something to us. This is how we express ourselves and fulfill our need for identity. And so this stuff it's good. It's good to create an awesome brand. Your customers will thank you for it because it will resonate with them and help them to express themselves. But it will also help them with their decision making, because we're bombarded with options all the time, and we like to be able to just intuitively, associate the visuals and the language of a brand and believe what we think it's telling us, instead of, going to all of the work of, researching, well, is this actually bold and sassy and badass? And, we're going to believe it because it's the easier thing to do. It makes our life easier. It makes the decision-making easier. And then from the business perspective, it benefits us to convey an accurate message. It benefits us for our customer to first be drawn in by the character that we've put out there. But if once they open it and they take a bite, it is a complete 180, it's nothing like what they expected given the packaging, then it's not serving its purpose, right? So the outer expression should match the true inner promise that the business has to give. That's the point. You don't just want to attract people, you want them to be pleased. You want them to be satisfied with the result of interacting with your product or service. And the only way to do that is by setting accurate expectations. And so a lot of really amateur marketing really bloats and exaggerates the value of a product, and that's not ever going to work, because as soon as they interact with it, they're going to be even more disappointed than if the marketing had been true and then they had the crappier product, because the disparity between their expectations and what they actually interact with, they're not going to forgive you for that, And so that again speaks to the importance for the authenticity. Talk about your make promises you can keep. Make them, and know that that's enough, because it takes time to build the brand with the customer. So if you can't be shiny and bright and exciting, then that's okay. It might take you a little bit longer to start building your base of clientele that are excited about your more natural offering. But it's going to be an accumulation of consistent experiences where you pleased them and you made them feel good about themselves on a certain level in some way. And over time, your brand is going to build just like everybody else's. And so this might be a good time to kind of talk a little bit about the brand character palette. That I talked about this a little bit in the January event. And the reason I want to talk about it is because one of the cautions that I want to give you as you're developing your brand character is that you're almost always going to discount what's special about you. Almost always. It's really, really hard to value something that just comes naturally to you, for one thing, but also you probably have, just kind of lived a life of striving to be something that you're not in different areas. It just happens. And so with the brand character palette, I've outlined that there's 3 different types of appeal. There are categories of appeal, so there's lots of different ways to kind of use them, but one of those appeals is levity. Okay, and so your really boisterous brands, the ones that are funny and witty and bright and positive energy, like just energy like you can't believe, those are your levity brands. And then you have on another extreme, you have power as an appeal. And power is seduction, and it's, you know, shock, and it's like really in your face confidence, and things that just kind of make your heart beat a little bit faster. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have depth. And depth is the stuff that gives you goosebumps. It's the stuff that chokes you up and makes your body feel kind of tingly. It hits you on a really emotional level. And, you know, sometimes it's a little spiritual, sometimes it's, you know, just really, really personal, enlightening. And so those three different appeals, why I really like to use them, is because it really simplifies the whole thing for you. Because instantly, you kind of know where you land. You kind of know which ones, and it can be two of them, it can be one of them, it can be all of them. If you have all three of those things in your personality naturally, you can use that. But if there's ones that you do not have naturally, you know which ones are really difficult for you to do. And in particular, you know, if you're a professional, or think about which ones come out most when you are like right on your game in terms of, you know, working professionally in a setting. Or, you know, if you're a writer, if you're writing in a journal, so not for anybody else, not for a client, not for, you know, the outer world, what's your voice sound like then? You know, think about which of those appeals, just where do you land? What comes most naturally to you? And realize that if you land in depth, you're probably going to look at the brands that use levity and feel like, damn, I wish I could do that. And if you're in levity, you're going to look at the ones that use power, and you're going to think, damn, I wish I could do that. And if you're in power, you get what I'm saying. And so, and you know, I never really did know quite how true this was until, like, most of my clients land in the power depth spectrum when I work with them. And every single one of them always wanted the levity. They always wanted to be up there. And they thought that they were at a disadvantage for not being so. And then I had the pleasure of working with somebody who was naturally in the levity area. Like, you just could not hold back the natural upward energy of this person. She was funny, witty, she was in your face. Her secondary would be power, if anything. And I couldn't believe it when I had a hard time convincing her that was a gift, that was something to embrace. She thought people wouldn't take her seriously. She thought she needed to tone it all down and operate in this deeper emotional place because that's where other coaches were being seen and being listened to. And it really, you know, that was the particular moment that it really hit me. It doesn't matter where you are on the spectrum, you're going to undervalue it. And so don't is really my message to you on that. But let's dive into the questions that I have for you to help kind of start getting clearer, like digging up some ideas. And I'm going to share my screen.
Lisa, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is it possible to be like two of those things, like kind of, and incorporate, like I would, like when I'm hearing you talk, I'm like, I think that I'm like a levity depth person because I like to talk about really deep things with people, but I'm like, I'll like talk and then I'm like, I smile and wink at the end or something, or like I like, you know, like I say something really like goofy at the end. I mean, you know, but like we all do that or something, like make a joke.
Yeah.
But I feel like the information I'm often communicating is sort of like deep or spiritual or emotional.
Yeah.
But I try and like, I don't know, I think like maybe my personality is more to like take things in stride like that. Like, let's get heavy, let's get real, but like let's all walk with a bounce in our step while we do it, you know?
Yeah.
So is that confusing to communicate?
No, of course not. So I love that question. So my tool that I created, it's called the Brand Character Palette. And the reason it's a palette is because you can mix, you know, really what it's made up of is archetypes. And I don't want to get into each of the archetypes because of time, but you can mix them, right? And you do. And so a really good example of like some mixed appeals in brands would be, Danielle LaPore. So she uses, like, she is the epitome of using power and depth together. She uses them both beautifully. And so you can definitely mix them up, but really it's like, that's why authenticity first, know where you can operate, and then definitely, and the other thing too is sometimes, like, so your brand character is comprised of your visual identity, your verbal identity, and your behavior, like your behavioral idiosyncrasies and practices. And so particularly with the visual and the verbal, what I also like to point out is they don't have to hit the same note. If you look at a lot of really fun brands or cool brands, their visual often conveys one part of their personality, and the writing, the brand voice, conveys a completely different part. So, you'll see a brand that's visually really sophisticated and classic and refined, but then you get into the language they use and the stories they tell, and they're entirely using levity. They're lightening it all up. And so, and that's, that's great because it's not as boring, like you're always wanting to be as interesting as you can. And if you have those different pieces of your personality at your disposal, then put them out there. And the other thing too is, if there's parts of your personality that, are not necessarily as important to drawing in customers, like you want to put the stuff out there that's going to draw in your right customers. That's got to be your top priority. But then if there's stuff that is really going to resonate with them as they're working with you, like think of it as, once they get past that outer shell, like at the outer shell, they're really learning mostly this part of your personality. But as they get in, then you're opening up new parts of your personality, which are nice surprises. So it's an opportunity to kind of, like in my outer communications, I really stick to kind of the power and depth areas, because if I'm not great at making jokes, but when I'm in client calls, when I'm one-on-one, it's a lot different for me, and I'll be quite funny. But that's just a nice surprise for them. Like, I get them in because I build credibility using my power and my depth, and then I keep them and I make the experience even more enjoyable by tapping into the bit of levity that I can and do have. But the levity, it's not what comes out most naturally to me. When I'm talking about branding, I get kind of like, and like, so if I tried to be all fun and funky about it, it wouldn't jive like at the outer level. So thinking about yourself as kind of having layers of personality can help too. And so Shana, I'm kind of worried about time. Do you want to?
This is perfect. This is a great time to give them a good 10 minutes or so to play with Pinterest and get a board started. Okay.
So what I'm going to do is just really quickly, because I think it'll help. I think it'll help you with your pinning. I have a client example I want to share with you really quickly. Because the pinning process, I want to introduce you to this idea of a creative theme. So first you're going to pin. You're going to pin freely. You're going to pin, and I always recommend, following the aesthetic, not the content. So, like, just aesthetically, these images need to really mean something to you. But then, after that, we need to kind of go back to that strategy component and look at what you've pinned and pull out possible themes. Because the whole breadth of everything that inspires you is not going to be cohesive enough. So I'm going to show you really quickly an example of how I've done that with a client, and then I think that'll kind of just add some relevance to why you're doing this.
And another thing that's really brilliant is that if you are, I would love for you guys to do this. It might happen at lunch, not now, but partner up with somebody and have them look at your board and have them pull themes out, because we can't always see the repetitive themes because we see it as very different because we're too close to it. And when you have somebody else look at your board and say, I'm getting a lot of this feeling from your board, you can say, okay, that's what I want to portray. That's not what I want to portray. That's how I feel. You can kind of play off of that a little bit. So it was nice if you'd like to at lunchtime partner with somebody to take a look at the board you create.
Exactly. That's a great example. And yeah, I don't know if, like, I was going to offer once the pinning is done. This is when I thought we were going to start a little earlier, but if, like, I would look at somebody's board too if you wanted to kind of see what I saw. But anyways, so this is an example of a free pinning that one of my clients did aesthetically. This is the one I talked about actually who was really in the levity spectrum. And so looking at her board, I pulled out, there were 3 kind of themes coming through to me. One of them was like this party girl, really sparkly, vibrant theme. One of them was this kind of free spirit, more of a hippie kind of feel. And then the other one was more kind of an intimate relationship with yourself on a personal level. And so what I did is I pulled out that, and knowing, the strategic stuff we had talked about, I came up with 3 theme concepts. One was play with life, which was all about fun, celebration, mischief, and freedom. The other was live richly, which was about worth, beauty, quality, and abundance. And the other one was beautiful you, which was all about love, confidence, and independence. And what I really hope kind of hits here is all of this stuff came from her truths. All of this stuff was there in her vision, in her ideas, in her authenticity, and when she pinned, all of this stuff came out, and you can see that 3 really, really different brand ideas and creative themes could come out of it. And so when you go to a designer and you haven't done the sifting for them, you're allowing them to choose this theme for you. And they're not going to do it like I did here, where they present you 3 completely different ideas. They're just going to go off in the direction that hits them first, or hits them most, or that they got from you, because they're going to think you know this. They're going to think you've already planned this. And so just once you've done that, then you create a final cohesive mood board that is truly and entirely the representation of your brand, and you infuse that into all of the elements of your visuals. So this is your visual brand we're talking about here, your visual identity. And so you can see what I call this thing on the top left is actually your visual sounding board. And if you kind of hold it up against the elements of your brand, it should match, the tone should match in terms of how it makes you feel. And so that's, actually I could just kind of put these mood boarding tips up, but then you won't be able to see me. Okay, well, quickly, again, look at the aesthetic, and also it's all about the search terms you use if you are using Pinterest. The adjectives you use, and the think of metaphors for the way that you want to make people feel. And so, if you want to make people feel comfortable, think about things in life that make you feel comfortable, like sweaters and blankets and pillows, and, start looking for those things and adding them to your board. And I highly recommend, once you've found a keyword that you really like, go into the boards versus just the pins, because people have already curated boards around these keywords, and you can find people who have an aesthetic that resonates with you, and you can find a board that's an entire gold mine. So I'm going to stop sharing, and so does anybody have any questions about this next kind of mood boarding part?
And if you prefer to do this with paper, we still have the magazines. The magazines are just a little bit of a slower process because it's more sifting. You can't do a search. That's up to you guys. But yeah, you're welcome if you're ready to do Pinterest. Open it up and go to pinning.
I have a question.
Yeah.
We have about 10, 15 minutes. I'll tell Christy we'll start a little bit late. Is that okay? Over. Okay, question. I'm sorry. Question.
No, it's okay. You were saying there was a visual and the verbal, and there was a third one.
Yeah, the third one is behavioral. So it's just like, when you walk into Starbucks and everybody who's at the desk is smiley. They ask you your name. They write it on the cup. They're just little practices that a brand has that reinforces the feeling that they want to create. So that act of writing your name on the cup, there's a logistical benefit, but it also makes you feel special to have, you know, them asking you your name. So that's just kind of an example.
Lisa, I have a quick question. Oh, go ahead. Okay.
Nope.
Quick question. If you're free, would you like to come back during lunch, and while they're having their lunch, if they feel like pinning and asking you questions, we could continue this?
Yeah, definitely. What time is your lunch?
It's at noon Central Time, so it's almost 10 now, so in 2 hours we'll have our lunch. We're going to do the graphics session in about 10 minutes or so, but it'd be great for them to get this board started, get a few pins up there, and I think it's nice to let them have the time to let the idea marinate a bit and come back to it, and then continue through lunch if they'd like to do a working lunch, and that's optional for you guys, but and then you can join us, have lunch with us.
Yeah, I'd love to do that because I feel like I stole most of the time.
I could listen to you all day.
Yeah.
I could do like a full weekend of Lisa branding.
Oh, thank you.
Take on a workshop, and I will come and learn everything from you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I already have my Pinterest set up. So are we creating a separate mood board just for this workshop?
Yes.
Or are we looking at each other's Pinterest in general?
Nope, you're creating your own mood board for this workshop.
The branding.
Okay. If you have one started and you want to just add to it, you could do that too. Okay. I started a new one. When I do my branding revisiting, I revisit it often, and I'll start a new one each time. Like sometimes I'll take pins from the old one that are still relevant, and it gets clearer every time I do it. So I just created one called Brand Love, and it's got, it has fewer pins, but they're more cohesive. Does it make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, and so for this stage, don't worry too much about being cohesive, just get it out there. And if you do create your board, you can create it privately, but if you don't create it privately, and if like one or two of you want to send it to me via email, I can have a look and pull out a few possible themes for you over the lunchtime thing. So my email, if anybody wants to do that, is just lisa@lisahaggis.com.
Just Lisa or Lisa?
No, sorry, it's Lisa.
That's
Lisa@lisahaggis.com.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Just Lisa would be too cool for me. Yeah, so if anybody sends that to me, like, at any point, then, I'll fit in what I can. And yeah, I'd love to do that. So I'll watch for you at like 1 o'clock, Shana?
Yeah,
1 o'clock my time, noon your time.
Central. Perfect. Yeah. Let's hang out on the line for another few minutes yet while we get the board started. And,
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Drink a bunch of water.
And just
Some lunchbox
I'll be right back in
ideas.
2 seconds, guys.
His feature on Pinterest.
What?
His feature on Pinterest is lunchbox ideas. I'll start there.
Started a brand inspiration board, Lisa.
Yay! Did you do it on your phone?
Yeah.
Oh my god, I'm really impressed. I can't do anything like that on my phone.
That phone's really nice.
So do you recommend when doing searches to put in multiple words or just like one keyword that's coming to your mind?
Like one at a time, or like a phrase, like when you're searching on Pinterest, try to think of like phrases that other people would use to describe what it is that you're going for.
Okay.
Like does anybody have an example and want some ideas for search words?
Okay, I'll give you a tough one. Sorry, Lisa, you probably can't see me. It's Tamsin. I'm like right here.
Can't even see you.
Yeah,
Okay, bye.
it's my hand.
Okay, give me a tough one.
But okay, so law and lawyer, because I am so not the typical lawyer, and I know what my brand is. I know it's approachable and fun and cool. But like, what do I pin?
What do you pin? Well, have you answered the question? Here's a couple discovery questions that might help you. I didn't get to kind of do these, but I'm going to share that, and then if you guys can look up at it. So some discovery questions to help you get to keywords to search. What were you born with in abundance? So is it honesty? Is it,
it's honesty, transparency, organization, the ability to strategize.
So you're definitely getting some good keywords there, like organization and, honesty. So if you take a word like honesty, like visually, what does honesty look like?
Clear blue water to me.
Okay, so then that would be a good thing. Like, go pin some photos of clear blue water.
Okay, because that's what I have pinned, but I'm like, how?
Okay, no, but that's okay. That's okay. It's because what you'll find is not any photo of clear blue water is going to actually say honesty.
Right.
Right? So you're going to have to find the perfect photo of clear blue water, and there's going to be something about that photo that really worked for you, and you'll be able to use that as information for forming your visual identity.
Okay.
Okay, so like as an example, a vibrant ocean with like a sunset and waves might not feel as much like honesty to you as really calm, like a calm pond with like a lily pad or something, right? Yeah. And then you have to ask yourself why. Well, it's because it feels, it's calm, and then maybe calm is another word that means something to you. So you can see like this could really balloon, and definitely 10 minutes isn't enough to really get it all done. But start with just a few that matter to you. So you said, you were also born with organization in abundance. Well, what does organization look like?
The Container Store.
Tupperware. IKEA. Well, things that are really packaged. So, like, for example, organization, structure is one of my things, and I found that the word composed really helps me get to imagery that says something.
Yeah, because it's definitely the Container Store because it's structure, but it's color.
Okay. Well, and then you could use that, like the Container Store, especially because it's not in your industry, can become a benchmark brand for you. Where you start to think, well, what would the Container Store do? And take pieces, inspiration from pieces of their brand that really kind of convey the message you want to convey. And like the truth is, I don't know if I have the Container Store here in Canada, so I don't know its brand very well. But the idea, like from what I picture it might be like, the idea that a lawyer would use a brand with a similar feel sounds really refreshing to me.
Refreshing.
Yeah.
That cool, clear water says that as well. Like,
does anybody?
I apologize in advance for anyone that's following me on Pinterest right now. I'm totally spamming.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I do that too.
Pin.
It's a pin's creek.
Perfect.
And definitely ask yourselves the question, like when you say, how do you want interacting with your business to feel? Ask the question, what other things in life make you feel that way? And that'll give you some ideas for searching and pinning as well.
Thank you. That makes so much sense.
And it's fun too, right?
Oh yeah.
I'm finding a lot of stuff that I really like, but then I don't like the style. Like, ooh, that's a great idea, but that's an awful photo, and I would never put it in those colors.
Lisa, I really like your logo on your PowerPoint.
Oh, thank you.
We just, well, I'm still in college, so we just worked on trying to create our own logo for a class last year, and was that last year? No. Oh my gosh, that was 2 years ago actually. And I'm still toying with it and looking at everyone else's and just getting inspired by how simple it could be.
Mm-hmm.
Still look really great.
Yeah, it could definitely be simple. And your logo is, it's a part of your visual identity, and so there's definitely, you want it to answer these questions as well, right? Like your logo, what's the effect that you want it? What's the effect you visually want to have on people? Well, your logo it has to serve that as well. And so, it's interesting, the logo. So I just mentioned to Tamsin how the Container Store could be a benchmark brand for her, and having a benchmark brand from another industry than yours is so useful, especially when you're going through the logo process, I find, because and if you're designing your own, it might not be the same, but when you're presented with options, you kind of lose yourself. Like you start to kind of give into the shiny, fancy stuff, even if that's not who you are. And having those benchmark brands to ground you and say, what would this brand do, can often make the decision a no-brainer.
Awesome.
Are you using these questions?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He was like, okay.
I hate that I can't see you and show you my questions.
Oh, yeah, because you get that screen, too.
It's
a big tease right now, but I'm going to transition us into the next session, and we will revisit this at lunch. But I think there's something very healthy about doing that this way, because it'll give it time to resonate or to soak into your subconscious a bit, and when you come back to it, things are going to pop up. That the things that are really relevant that are going to stick are the ones that you're going to remember. Does that make sense? All right.
Very true. Okay, I'm just going to give a final wave before I get, turned away.
Oh, turned away.
Okay.
You're awesome. We'll see you in just a couple of hours, my dear.
Sounds good. All right, have fun. Talk to you later. Bye.